As Tommy Lee Jones nears his 80th birthday, it's impossible not to reflect on the complexity of his character, both on screen and off. The Texas-born actor, who once commanded attention with his commanding performances in some of the most iconic films of the past few decades, now lives in almost complete seclusion. He has always been an enigma in Hollywood, a man who chose to live outside the limelight, even though he could have embraced the fame and fortune that came with being one of the most respected actors of his generation. His life is a quiet contradiction. While his face is instantly recognizable, his personal life remains largely hidden, veiled in secrecy, and seemingly untouched by the trappings of celebrity. Jones has always been a man of few words, but as he's gotten older, his silence seems to have grown more deafening. The coldness of his on-screen characters, those laconic lawmen, weary soldiers, and gruff detectives, was once merely a reflection of his acting prowess. But now it feels as if these characters have bled into his real life. When he isn't making sporadic appearances in films, he's far removed from the world of Hollywood. His retreat to his 3,000-acre ranch in San Antonio, Texas, has become a symbol of his deliberate withdrawal from the very industry that made him famous. He lives a simple rural life, raising cattle, hunting, and tending to the land. The vast, empty expanse of the Texas landscape mirrors his emotional landscape, wide, open, but devoid of the connections that could fill the spaces with warmth. The choice to live in isolation is not just a preference, but perhaps a defense mechanism. Jones's career has been marked by moments of intense public scrutiny, and while some might see his retreat as a form of self-preservation, it's impossible to ignore the lingering sense of detachment that comes with it. His decision to live far away from his peers in the entertainment industry may have been born out of a desire to maintain his sanity, but it also speaks to a deeper yearning for peace that, as time goes on, seems to come at the expense of his own happiness. He is not the kind of actor who thrives on the validation of fans or colleagues. In fact, he's made it clear on numerous occasions that the celebrity machine was never something he was interested in being a part of. But in doing so, he has also turned away from the support networks that so many in his position lean on. In interviews, Tommy Lee Jones has often come off as taciturn, almost distant, a man who seems uncomfortable with the performative nature of fame. In many ways, this discomfort is understandable. After all, his early life in Texas wasn't filled with the luxuries of Hollywood. Raised in a working-class family, Jones was not primed to seek attention. His love of acting came out of a desire to express himself, not to seek adoration. But in a career that stretched for over 4 decades, the need for privacy became more and more challenging. What might have started as a preference became over time a necessity. As Jones rose to fame in the 1990s, particularly after winning an Academy Award for his role in The Fugitive, the pressures of fame grew heavier. The world wanted to know everything about him, the private details, the emotions he rarely shared. However, Jones's resistance to the constant probing only led to further isolation. He distanced himself from the promotional circuits, refused to engage in lengthy interviews, and generally avoided the public spotlight. His gruff persona, which served him well on screen, seemed to fuel the myth of the difficult actor behind the scenes. Colleagues have spoken about his unpredictable behavior on set, his sometimes curt interactions with directors and cast members. There is a famous story from the making of No Country for Old Men, where Jones, already a veteran actor, allegedly went toe-to-toe with the Coen brothers over minor creative decisions. It's this type of perfectionism that likely made him an unparalleled talent, but also a challenging person to work with. Though his sharpness led to some of his best performances, it also made him a loner within the very community that helped shape his career. Even his relationship with his children paints a picture of emotional distance. His daughter Victoria and his son Austin have largely remained out of the public eye, which is not unusual for children of famous parents. But the lack of any meaningful media presence or public acknowledgement of their father-daughter, father-son relationships suggests a disconnect that transcends the usual celebrity lifestyle. This is not a man who openly speaks about his love for his children or shows up at public events with them. Unlike other Hollywood icons who find joy in sharing their families with the world, Jones has kept his private life tightly sealed, leaving fans and the press alike with little to hold on to except his professional legacy. Of course, it's easy to say that Jones prefers his private life, but at what cost? The very isolation he has chosen appears to have come with a deep sense of loneliness. He might spend his days on his ranch, working the land or indulging in solitary hobbies like reading or watching old films. But what does that really amount to as the years go by? A man who was once so connected to the pulse of the movie industry now lives a life that feels more like a quiet retreat, slowly fading into obscurity. His acting career has slowed down considerably, with his last major role being in Ad Astra in 2019, though many had hoped to see him take on more roles in his later years. His absence from the screen is as noticeable as his presence once was. Tommy Lee Jones is not someone who craves sympathy or attention. His career was built on strength, perseverance, and a determination to maintain his integrity. But as he gets older, one can't help but wonder if his quiet life, while perhaps a choice, has also been shaped by something much more painful. It's hard to shake the image of the aging man alone in his Texas ranch, grappling with the fact that the career that once gave him purpose and meaning has slowed to a crawl. There's no question that his legacy in film will be remembered for years to come. But will it be enough to fill the void he has created around himself? As his 80th birthday approaches, Tommy Lee Jones stands at the crossroads of an extraordinary career and an even more extraordinary personal life, one that is far more complex than the roles he's played. The sadness that colors his life isn't one of overt despair, but a quiet, underlying loneliness. A man whose pride and independence have come at the cost of the connections that could have given him joy in his later years. The tragedy is not in the loss of fame or accolades, but in the realization that sometimes the price of privacy and independence is far greater than we ever anticipate. And so, as Tommy Lee Jones approaches his 80th birthday, it's impossible not to feel that there is something deeply sad about how he lives now. The career that once defined him has slowed to a crawl, and the isolation that has characterized his later years seems to have only deepened. He's lived much of his life according to his own rules, never bowing to the whims of Hollywood or the pressures of fame. But what is the price of that solitude? In a world where the concept of legacy often intertwines with public recognition and personal relationships, Jones has, in many ways, cut himself off from both. While his iconic status in Hollywood will undoubtedly live on, the sadness of his life in these later years is undeniable. The grief is subtle, hidden beneath his stoic demeanor, but it's there. A man who once thrived on screen as a character of unwavering resolve now seems like a person who has weathered years of emotional storms in silence, unwilling or unable to reach out to others for support. His legacy will be cemented, certainly, in the roles he played and the iconic characters he brought to life. But as he grows older, it becomes clearer that his story is not just one of fame and recognition. It's also a story of quiet loneliness, of a man who built a wall around his life that has over time become nearly impossible to break down. What he has lost in fame and connection is perhaps the very thing that could have given him the peace he so fiercely sought in his retreat. Love, companionship, and the kind of warmth that can only come from the people around you. And now, as he approaches his 80th year, there's a palpable sense that Tommy Lee Jones may have traded those things for the kind of independence that leaves him standing alone, as his career and the years slip away, unnoticed and unheard by a world that once celebrated him.